Tyson does want to mention that baking soda also worked really well for soaking off labels.
Yeah, it does.
Hot water baking soda.
Maybe I'll try adding some baking soda to the next batch of obnoxious labels I've got, because I got a friend who keeps giving me the bottles with the obnoxious labels.
Another one that works, and the downside of this is that it's really hard to then get it off the bottles, but it does ensure that the bottles are also clean, is Comet. Yeah. I mean, it's this stuff is... we use it, we've discovered that, like, okay, say if you've got a bottle that, or just, a piece of pot or a pan or a piece of glassware or something that's got something you just cannot get off of there, if you just pour a little Comet in the bottom and cover it up with water and let it sit for a couple of hours, it will totally let go, because this stuff will just eat through anything. And so, if you... Basically what I do is I get the bottles wet, sprinkle them with Comet over the label, and then dunk them back in the water and let them sit there, But then, of course, you have to get the Comet off the bottles and out of the bottles, and that's the downside.
Yeah, that's a lot of rinsing.
It is a lot of rinsing, yeah. Well, that's where the dishwasher comes in handy.
Yeah, I find mine doesn't get stuff up into bottles very well.
Oh, yeah. Now, mine's pretty good. It's pretty powerful. It's new-ish. It hasn't started to fade yet, so... The last one died completely. I had to buy a new one,
All right, before we move on to the next topic, anybody got any final comments on sanitation or bottle washing?
No, I think we covered it pretty well.
All right.
Cool.
Next thing, taking notes. Because that one's always important, You get so many people who come on and they say, well, I dumped a bunch of honey and a bunch of water together and I put some yeast in. Well, what kind of yeast did you use? I don't know. How much water did you use? Well, I don't know. How much honey did you use? I don't know. Do you know your name? I don't know. So, what are the important things to take note of? I find a full list of all ingredients. I like to make sure that anything that goes in my mead gets listed on my list. And then also every step that I take and the timing of it as well. And I also will do my math on the side of the page, trying to figure out how much nutrients I'm going to put where, and I will put my nutrient addition amounts on empty lines. Like what I do is every time I touch the mead, I have a line. Did this, looked at that, comment this, and if you see anything interesting, take note of it. When it starts bubbling, take note of it. And the notes that I took as a beginner, because I didn't know what I needed to look for, were a lot more copious than the notes that I take as a more experienced and lazier mead maker now. Because I know what I'm looking for, and I only record something now if it's, not what is expected, or if it's, out of the ordinary. So, I don't record that, it smells like it's fermenting, because, of course, it smells like it's fermenting, because it's fermenting. But, I always make sure that I take an initial specific gravity, and I try to make sure that everything's at room temperature when I do that, because I can't be bothered to care about temperature, adjusting it for temperature. So I just assume that if it's at room temperature, it's at room temperature, so I don't need to make any corrections for it. So I always put, the date, the time, and whatever I've done to my mead after I've written down the original recipe and all my procedures.
I think that's about the same thing that I do. The thing the mistakes that I made when I first started out was the date. I forgot to put the date on a couple of things, and then a couple, 3-4 months down the line, you're like, wait a minute, is this 6 months old or 2 months old, or when did I start this? And the date is very important, But yeah, I think that's pretty much exactly what I do, as far as what I write down. But for the beginner, I think it's important to write down the date and all the amounts, and then what you did when, because and every time that you write something down, or that you do something to your mead, you really should be taking a gravity. So and that's important. Other than that, I don't see really, until you by the time you get advanced enough that you have to put other stuff, you're good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's definitely some value to, taking notes about like what it looks like and what it smells like at every step of the process as a beginner, so that you know what you should be looking for, and you know what's normal, so that you know when something is not normal.
Right. Yeah, and other people can that are starting out can see your notes later on and say, "Hey, okay, I got that too."
Exactly. Any other comments?
I would also add to do all of your math equations, and in other words, before you actually start hands-on making your must or doing your procedures, write all it down so you know how much of K2CO3 you're going to add and how many, grams of this and that for your SNAs, and so that you don't have to stop and try to figure all that stuff out when everything's going off right in front of you.
Well, actually, that leads into the next item that I wanted to talk about, which was getting things set up before you start, including researching and asking questions about your ingredients, and also doing the math and making sure you've got everything in the house that you need, so you don't have to make a midnight run to your brew store.
Right. I would actually recommend if you're a beginning mead maker, don't do math. Get yourself a proven recipe, and follow the recipe. Which, remember, I think last week we were saying these are not recipes; these are formulas. So, especially when you're first starting out, it's important to get a proven recipe and follow it to the letter, so that you can at least try and replicate something that somebody's already proven works. And when you have those, if you go to us on Got Mead, for example, you go to the member area where they have all the good, where they have all the proven recipes, like from Oscar and these guys and Bray. Those are a great way to start out. It's all done for you. Just follow it.
That's a really good point for a beginner too. But oftentimes you'll have somebody who's got something that they want to turn into a mead, and so they're going to be formulating their own recipe.
Right, that's true. That's true.
Well, hopefully not first mead, but
yeah.
I think
if they're
brand new people. Go ahead, Manny.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm saying if they have something that they want to make into a mead that's never been made before, I would hope if they're beginners that they would seek out somebody who's already been doing this and get some advice from them first. Just don't dive in with all this like you did with the 27 spices.
That was Vicky.
Oh, right. Oh, that was Vicky. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm guilty of far worse crimes, but carry on. Sorry.
I would suggest for new mead makers to don't go off and try to start making your own crazy stuff right away. Make some things that are in the proven recipe section, in the patrons section of Got Mead, or at least double check and make sure, talk to some of the other people on the forum and say, this is what I plan on doing, what do you think? I think we all see all the time people get on and say, well, I did this and now I'm screwed up and how can you help me? And they don't have good enough taken notes that we can be of much help, and they miss things. I would just say start with the main and plain things for a while and color within the lines before you think you're ready to go.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's also some really good.
Do you have? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say there's a couple of really good resources if you're using different fruits. If you can't find something on Got Mead, Jack Keller's website has a lot of wine recipes that are good for mead. You just have to, that are good for different fruits. You just have to keep in mind that if you're taking a wine recipe and converting it to a mead recipe, don't add any acid to it. That's pretty much the thing if you're going into that. Because let's face it, a lot of people are just suddenly, the grapes were on sale or the strawberries were on sale, and suddenly you've got all this fruit. You want to do something with it, and you've got the fruit in hand. You need to figure out quickly what you're going to do with it. You don't have a couple of days to wait for people to respond to your forum post. So you do the research that you can. And
That's true. Those people, I usually tell them 3 months later, I ask them if they have a still. That's all that's going to be good for.
Well, it depends. I mean, if you started as a winemaker, then, you get used to how to do all of this stuff, too.
Yeah, that's the other thing. If you're coming to mead as a beer maker or a wine maker, you've got 15 legs up on everybody else because you already have a lot of good habits, or we hope.
Yeah, but there's also a couple of things you might not know.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
For the beer makers, you don't have to boil everything. Honest. And, again, for the winemakers, don't add acid up front if you're using honey. I made that mistake myself for a very long time.
Right.
Now,
I think a lot of the old wine recipes also tell you to add clarifiers up front. I don't know how many people would say that's the right thing to do in today's modern age.
Well, I don't know about that either because, the first thing I ever did was make a wine kit, and that's what it has you do. The wine kits have you add your bentonite right up front. And what happens is because you're stirring it all the time, all the little particles get stuck to the big particles because you're stirring it all the time, and that's how you end up with the clear wine in a month.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And it works. So I've done it once or twice with. I think I did it last time I used 7-1B in the hopes that I'd get more of it to settle out before I racked it, so I wouldn't have to rack it again so soon.
Right. I have done it once, and it did clear, rather quickly. And I haven't been around for that long, but I see a lot of the old recipes for, some kind of moss. Isn't that also to be a clarifier?
Yeah, Irish moss. Yeah.
Irish moss.
Yeah, Irish moss. Yeah. And do people even use that anymore?
I don't know. Beer folk do, don't they?
I think it's a beer thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like a handlebar mustache of beer, I guess, if you really want to use it,
Yeah, but again, because it's a beer, you got to put it in beforehand because you can't just dump that in afterwards. Because, beer, got to boil it. Otherwise, it might go funky on you.
Yeah, and God help you don't ever take your eyes off it, even for a second.
We've all had to clean our stove from a boil over. Honey does it too.
Yeah, but not quite as abruptly as beer does. Yeah, my husband made it and literally took our eyes off it in that moment.
It was just waiting for you.
I haven't ever done that, but I have taken my eyes off of a carboy while I was racking and turned around and I got a bunch of mead running all around the floor.
Done that, yeah. Especially when you think that racking cane is still working, but really the little spring in there is stuck and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, the bottle filler.
Yeah, so I actually I stopped using bottle fillers because so many of them, they're just cheap, And I finally got to where I bought one of those clamp doohickeys you slide over the tubing and you can just zap it down it's almost like a ratchet strap, and you zap it down and it completely closes the tubing.
Yeah, I tried that. It hurt my thumb, so I just used my leaky little bottle filler.
Yeah.
But
I use my bottling bucket. I use the same bottling bucket I used to use for beer. I just transferred it over to mead use. It's it's got a little faucet and done. No big deal.
I had one of those and it leaked.
Yeah. Half my carboy's got the spigot at the bottom, which is great for racking. You just open and close the stopcock, but
it's not great if the gasket starts to go.
Yeah, and I'm here to tell you, raspberry mead is just and I'm just putting this out there for for as a PSA, public service announcement. Raspberry mead causes those things to deteriorate really fast. We've had this conversation before. I came home to look like somebody had been murdered in my kitchen. There was a pool of redness,
Oh, it's awful.
It looked like a scene from Law and Order. It was hilarious.
Well, mine was just the banana wine, which is no big loss. The damn stuff still hasn't cleared, and it's probably been 10 years.
This was actually a pretty good raspberry mill. And the really ridiculous thing was that particular batch was just a pain. It just was determined to be a pain. First it did that, and so I lost a good chunk of it there, and it stained my foundation because it leaked through the hardwood floor and out to the foundation. And then the rest
Wow.
finally got bottled, and at least half of that decided